I just want to give you some very quick lessons learned. We're still learning. It's not finished. I expect 10 to 15 years before we really figure out what's the best for the soils here. But as Claire showed you, we have some soils that are very marginal, very rocky. Other soils where the topsoil has been eroded severely. And what we're trying to do is stop mining the soil. That's our goal. Number two, we're trying to reduce the erosion on the soils. So what we have put into place is a process, what we call a direct seeding program. It's not a practice, it's a program, and you have to really try, experiment, and work with. You heard this morning the yeses and the nos and the do's and the don'ts, and I have tried that and it doesn't work, and all kinds of ideas. And I can't say that yours will work like ours has, but I just want to give you an experience of how we've done it and what we've experienced. And important is to maintain good stubble. If you recognize when they built the erosion control structures, if you just go right up here, all the water that falls to the left on this hill and on further north goes into Idaho. And all the rainfall goes south from here down into the Howell Basin. What we want to do is to reduce as much erosion as we can so that the soil does not move with any water. So the water can't move, and we're trying to hold it here. And when those dikes, terraces were first put in the 60s and the 70s, the then SCS or NRCS said that you must have a residue control program along with it. And I doubt that any of the growers understood what that really meant. And in fact, we're just learning right now. In the past 6 years that we've done this direct seeding, we've learned a lot about what it means to have a residue management program. And we've learned to grow crops without tillage. Probably the hardest thing is to walk away from a tillage implement and sell it, trade it, get rid of it, and never look back. That's the hardest thing to do. And most of you, as we talked about today, can't do that because of financial constraints and issues. I understand that. But we said this is something we must do here because we've got to stop the erosion. During the first 6 years, we averaged a 40% increase in our yield of hard red winter wheat, which is 12 bushels per acre. Now you're going to say that's not a whole lot, but over the years, from 2000 to 2004, we averaged 30.1. And I know some of the folks in here say, we can do better, and I take my hat off to you because you do better. We're on marginal soils here. And so we couldn't do any better with the systems that we had. We had to change. And we started, Claire wanted to have a rotational crop. We started safflower in 2002, and I've given you the 2003 and 4 data. And then after 2005 is when we first implemented what we call direct seeding. And in that process, we averaged 42.3 bushels, a 40% increase. Now we hope the next 5 years we can do that well. I don't know if we can do that well, but we're surely going to try because we're doing our best to manage our residue and to reduce the soil erosion. And it appears that the soils are eroding much less than they have done before because we're not losing as much moisture nor soil down the waterways. We've watched better water infiltration, and that's because of the residue. When the residue is on the ground, it holds the water from moving off, so it stays on the ground instead of running away. And then the snow, it also helps because the snow holds the stubble holds the snow, and it must be the energy of the sun to the straw, melts the snow right around the straw, and it collapses the snow so that it's not as deep as it is, and we have less snow mold. So it's a benefit to us. You talked about snow mold. It's terrible, and it's just terrible around here. And we've gone to trying to spread fly ash. We get that from down south, and we haven't been successful yet in knowing where the snow mold's going to hit or where we need to really put on this fly ash, but we're trying our best to do that. So that's another ingredient that we're learning. Less water runoff, as I've already told you. The weed population has decreased. I heard just the opposite with Dr. Carden, and I don't know. But our conditions here are different than probably what they're going through. But we've noticed that it's been easier to control the weeds, especially during fallow. Now, one of the reasons why is because this is a program, again, it's not a practice. What means is you got to be on top. Someone said, maybe it was Phil, or one of you said, you got to be out in your fields almost every day to check what weeds are there, and if they get too high, spray them. And we found that we've had to do less spraying because when you get them small, as was pointed out, they don't go to seed. Now, the Lord knew what he was doing when he cursed Adam about the weeds. Because the weeds, I don't know if Earl is here, but he'll back you up. The weeds have this funny system that if anything goes wrong, it says, uh-oh, I got to go to maturity. And the next thing you know, we've got a head out and seeds are out. And even though they should have died, the seeds are already out and they're on the ground. And you say, wow, it should have died. And that's why spraying weeds that are already too high aren't worth it, because it's already put out those seeds. So we found that works well. We've improved the yields on some of these marginal lands. Riding in the combine with Claire with a yield monitor, I've never seen 40, 50, 60 bushel per acre on some of those marginal soils. It was just incredible. Now, one thing we found is we had a fuel savings of 2/3. Run over your field 5 times with a cultivator of some kind, rod weeder, chisel plow, etc. And that's a lot of power you have to use. But if you're just spraying, you're pulling a sprayer and you're pulling the planter and then the combine, you see you're losing all those tractor movements across the field. Now, we also saw that using a stripper header, we increased combine speeds. Now, maybe it's not going to work all the time, but it has in the last while we've used it. The stripper header, hardly anything goes through to be thrashed in the combine, because we turn the combine through all these fields, it doesn't get as much wear and tear. And it also has a great deal of residue standing. Then the GPS, that's a tractor driver's delight, because it really helps the over and under spraying and weeding, planter and the combine, and really helps you out. And it's awfully hard to watch everything as you're going down through the field if you don't have a GPS. And we found that the cost of it starting off bites you a bit, but you just roll it with whatever the implement you buy, tractor, you buy it with it. And then late fall application of glyphosate in newly harvested fields has lessened subsequent weed pressure. Probably the key to what we found is after the wheat is harvested, go in and spray it before the frost kills and kill your weeds. And it has been the single most beneficial weed control program we've had. Adding a second crop is the second most beneficial. Rotation and rotation. I learned this 40-some years ago when I taught college classes, and at least I thought I learned it, and I forgot it. You need a rotation in your growing of crops, and that rotation helps you control weeds that you wouldn't normally control if you just continuously growing the same crop. And that's been a great blessing to us to have safflower here. Now, we're not the best safflower growers. I mean, look out there. We're still learning how to grow safflower properly. The last 2 years we had pretty good stands. And we had a hybrid that just blossomed all kinds of blossoms and all kinds of pods. But this year, things didn't work out so well. We didn't get on there as when we wanted to because of the weather. So please forgive us. We're still learning. In using this rotation of hard red winter wheat, safflower, fallow rotation, you saw that in the plots that they were experimenting with. We find that when you use this rotation, yes, use up moisture, but the benefit of the safflower and then coming back with planting that hard red winter wheat on that third round is so beneficial. It's incredible. Then the yields we've had now using it, the direct seeding has been better than we've had on the conventional. And must perform timely operations. That's the other thing. You cannot do this alone. As I told you, you've got to make sure the weeds are controlled properly. You've got to plant when you're supposed to. You've got to harvest when you're supposed to. And you can't wait around because they'll just get ahead of you. It's a very tenuous situation, but you have to watch it carefully so that you don't get the weeds getting ahead of you. The weed pressure has decreased and wheat yields remain steady in spite of drought. And we've been able to see that even with the drought, was it last year, 2010, it didn't rain from the first spring through harvest. Didn't rain at all here. And we still had a similar wheat crop as we had the year before. So it's amazing to us. We see it working. Now, we had some unexpected benefits. We thought that using chemical spray would cause us all kinds of expenses, but actually decreased in some cases by 70%. We found that spraying the weeds, as I told you in the fall, you come back and spray on just spots because they're no longer there. They're no longer a pressure. You don't have to spray 4 and 5 times a season like we have done on the rest of it. And so we found that there has been a benefit. Not every field, but some of the fields. A second crop in rotation has assisted in reducing the weed populations. And you'd say, duh, that's correct. Because you can use different kinds of herbicides and different treatments to get rid of the weeds. And that is positive for you. Then apparent decrease in the disease inoculum, because if you just have the same crop, you're not letting it lay out long enough to get rid of that. Now, so our goal has been met. We feel that we're stopped mining the soil. We've got a long ways to go. We've got much more to do. Now, we've embarked on another challenge. Seems like we don't stop running challenges here, and Claire's just, Brother Omchow, we need to stop doing this on me. But I gave him another challenge, converting and planting the former CRP ground. And now we're using, without tillage, we've gone into CRP land, and you saw, I said, was it Neil? Yes, that's right. Neil showed this. This field was sprayed just before he planted. But in the fall, before he planted on, this is May 27. In the fall, he actually bush hogged the whole field. Get rid of the sagebrush, get rid of the tall weeds. And it looked like, okay, we've cut everything down, but we had a beautiful rain period and snow during that winter and spring, so we had a good lush growth. And then they sprayed it with glyphosate just before they went in and seeded. And this is what it looked like, and of course, you've seen that on Neil's slides. And then 2 weeks later, there's just everything's dead. And maybe you can see there's a plant there, there's another plant here, and there's another plant over there. They're coming up in the drill roll. There is nothing left in the field. Even all the weeds have been killed out. So what we have really learned that our benefits are: improve the soil health and tilth, decrease soil erosion and compaction, improve yields, maintain quality. Yes, we do, because our wheat goes into the welfare strategic storage program for the church. Deseret Grain says you need to have a certain quality. And Claire's been able to get 13-14% wheat. He's maintained that even on the direct seeding. and high test weight. Lowered the cost of growing the crops, showed you that the movement across the field is much less fuel, improved economic efficiency, and we've stopped mining the soil.